Alfred Korzybski's perspective, representing reality. What is reality? Alfred Korzybski, the founder of the Institute of General Semantics, believes we are confused about that, and he attributes our confusion to the language we use to speak about it, which is based on the Aristotelian system we inherited from our ancestors. The Aristotelian system, he explains, has a different structure from our world of ever-changing processes and from our nervous system. In Aristotelian logic, A is either B or not B. The Aristotelian system is based on the is of identity. A statement illustrating the is of identity would be, water is H2O. Korzybski would say that statement confuses levels of abstraction. It confuses reality, what exists at the nonverbal, unspeakable event level, with the verbal labels we use to represent the unspeakable event level. If I were to pour some water on you, you would know what water is non-verbally. But if I asked, what is that I poured on you? And if you answered water or H2O, a general semanticist would say, I didn't pour water or H2O on you. Water and H2O are words. I didn't pour words on you. Flustered, you might say, well, I'll describe the characteristics to you of water. Yet even if you were the greatest scientist who ever lived and who could list every characteristic about water you know, in the end, what you described with all your words wouldn't be it, because it is nonverbal, and the allness of what it is can't be captured by identification. The only link between the verbal and the nonverbal level, said Korzybski, is structure. To look at the structure of what exists at the level of happenings at the unspeakable nonverbal event level, Korzybski would have us look to science to find out, at this date, what science says reality is. At the microscopic level, reality might be so described as a dance of electrons. Any object you could name would represent a process which is constantly changing, an absolutely unique event. While an event is dynamic, the words we use to represent it are static and elementalistic. The event or process level is misrepresented by our Aristotelian language, believed Korzybski. The map, our words, is not the territory. To see what is there in reality, we can only point a finger and be silent. The law of identity is never applicable, maintained Korzybski. We can never say of anything on the event level, this is this, because two things that are processes are never identical in every respect to anything else or even to itself at a different point in time. What we observe in nature on the nonverbal level is unspeakable, because no amount of words, no listing of characteristics is ever equivalent to it. When we identify the nonverbal reality we see with the verbal words we use to represent it, we are confusing levels of abstraction, said Korzybski, confusing what we see with what we say. Everything we know of in nature, Korzybski writes, is different from everything else, even if only some small way. Nature doesn't repeat herself. When we talk about things, verbalize them, those differences are ignored. While we need to focus on similarities if we are to learn anything at all, the general semanticists say, if that's only what we see, we aren't seeing what is there. If one stimuli impacts us, we evaluate it only on its similarities to other events, and we ignore the differences between things, we aren't really seeing it. Nothing that exists on the event level, as far as we know, in our world of ever-changing processes is absolutely the same in all respects to anything else or to itself at a different point in time, stressed Korzybski. General semanticists defined identity as absolute sameness in all respects. If we identify, said Korzybski, we don't differentiate. It's identification, or identifying our symbols, our words, with the ever-changing nonverbal reality that confuses us. It leads us to ask all sorts of silly questions, said Korzybski, like, what is an object? What is life? What is hell? What is heaven? What is space? What is time? One who is conscious of abstracting, conscious that the nonverbal level of events is different from the verbal level, would answer, whatever one may say something is, it is not. Whatever we might say belongs to the verbal level, not to the nonverbal reality of which we can only point and be silent. We take our symbols, our words, Korzybski said, for reality. It's only when we stop doing this that our pathological reactions become sane. Our universe is filled with happenings, general semanticists emphasize. Something is always happening at the unspeakable nonverbal event level. Some of those happenings impact us, impinge on our nervous system. We react to a happening based on the structure of our nervous system, general semanticists teach. Thus, the observer always participates in the observed. We respond to some inputs at the event level, general semanticists point out, but we don't respond to many others. We don't respond to the allness of the nonverbal event level. I cannot hear, for instance, the sounds my dog can hear, because I have a different nervous structure. I only respond to nonverbal reality in terms of my own nervous structure, not in terms of the structure of the happenings on the event level, which are ever-changing. I abstract from reality. I respond to some things and not to others because of the way I'm put together, general semanticists stress. In the very act of abstracting from allness, we focus only on some aspects of the event that we can perceive with our nervous system or with our instruments. We make maps of the territory, but any map we make in anything we say, we are leaving out a tremendous amount, general semanticists believe. To make us aware of how we abstract from what is, Korzybski formulated a variety of extensional devices. What he said we needed to do was to create a language with a similar structure to reality. One extensional device which contributes to doing that is to use the word etc. after our statements to indicate everything we say is abstracted from reality, and that in saying it we are leaving things out. Korzybski points out, let's see, I said that all wrong. Let's go back to that sentence again. One extensional device which contributes to doing that is to use the word etc. after all our statements to indicate everything we say is abstracted from reality, and that in saying it we are leaving things out. Korzybski points out, one of the most pernicious bad habits which we have acquired emotionally from the old language is the feeling of allness, of concreteness, in connection with the is of identity and elementalism. The is of identity, said Korzybski, always gives a false evaluation of events that impacts us. What we have to do, said Korzybski, is start with silent observation and look for structure, for order, for relations, and then we must use verbal structures similar to them. Only mathematics, Korzybski found, has a similar structure to that of the world and our nervous system. If we want to confuse ourselves, he said, we can search for our verbal labels in nature. Try, for instance, to find time in the beginning or the end in nature. The more natural sequence, however, is to observe first and then come up with a verbal label for our observation. Extensional devices which Korzybski devised are based on this. They emphasize what we know from observation rather than what we think we know from identification. Extensional devices taken from modern physico-mathematical methods increase our consciousness of how we abstract from what is. Korzybski gives the example of our seeing a dog. A little later, we might see another dog and say it is a dog too. If we are not conscious that our words are abstractions from the nonverbal level, we might not be aware that what we encounter on the unspeakable event level is utterly unique. At the nonverbal level, there are only absolute individuals, each one different from the others. While each dog belongs to the class dog, each individual dog is a never-before-encountered event and has a unique relationship to the rest of the world, said Korzybski. Hence, Korzybski maintained, we need a language that represents that uniqueness. We should give the object a unique name. Korzybski said, if we are to accurately represent reality with our verbal levels, mathematics, Korzybski thought, show us how to do that. By calling each dog, dog 1, or dog 2, or dog 3, etc., we produce individual names, said Korzybski, and we cover the differences. The word dog indicates similarities. By using the extensional devices of indexing, we make ourselves conscious we are dealing with a unique event. The subscripts emphasize differences, while the name implies similarities. In doing this, we make the structure of our language fit the structure of reality at the unspeakable event level. Indexing would give us an indefinite number of proper names, each different, Korzybski said. The problems we encounter in life have semantic evaluation at their base, Korzybski contended. When we evaluate a happening consistent with its structure, consistent with reality as we know it from science, we can handle things better. Adequate ways of representing what exists at the unspeakable event level, Korzybski thought, would equip us to better face life's challenges. When you fit the words to the reality, instead of reality to the words, said Korzybski, you become better adjusted to the facts of reality. Facts, to a general semanticist, are what can be observed and verified by others. By directly observing something, the scientist can make a statement of fact about it. Statements of fact often consist of descriptions or naming something. Korzybski held we have to differentiate what we see from what we assume from our inferences. Whether something is true or false from the perspective of general semantics would be evaluated by seeing its fit with the data presented. We look to see the relationship between any statement that is made and the happening which it refers to, according to this way of thinking. We go beyond statements of fact when we make inferences. A general semanticist at a training seminar made this statement of fact: I see boats. Then he made this inference: the owners of the boats must be well off. When we have a nervous response to something that is said, to our words, we are at the inferential level in the process of abstracting. The speaker didn't say that the owners of the boats were well off as he looked out the window on some boats in a body of water. He inferred it. Statements of fact represent a lower level of abstraction, according to Korzybski, than do inferences. The data given by our lower nerve centers is closer to that which constitutes experience. When I say I see boats, we are making a factual statement about a visual experience. When we say those boat owners must be rich, we are making a higher order abstraction from a lower order abstraction, seeing boats. Yet even with the lower order abstraction, in making a factual statement involving what we see, Korzybski would say, our sense of sight is supplying us with information about the world that is very limited in quantity, specific in quality, an abstraction of a low order, never being it. Processes on the event level are not the words used to represent them when we make factual statements. Thus, consciousness of abstracting can make us more humble about anything we can possibly say. The natural survival order of abstracting, Korzybski said, is senses first. We have a visual experience. Mind next. A message is sent to the brain. Object next. We recognize a boat. Label next. We label what we see a boat. Inference next. We infer the owners of the boat must be rich. In mental illness or other human difficulties, Korzybski said, there is a reversal of this natural order. We think of the words as the object. Cancer, for instance, as a nonverbal event. Or we mistake our inferences, our assumptions, for description. Or we confuse what is happening in our minds as the product of our senses. In Korzybski's non-Aristotelian system, consciousness of the different levels of abstraction replaces identification as the source of our knowing. Creative work, Korzybski explains, begins when a person appropriates the higher order abstractions of many different individuals. Then the higher order abstractions are absorbed and returned in a modified form to the lower centers as visualization, intuition, feelings. The given individual is closer to the external world than he was before because he now has many more experiences than he himself could have gathered alone. General semanticists talk about processes which do not end or stop. Infinite processes. Processes not only have spatial aspects, Korzybski said, but temporal aspects too. To increase our awareness of the space-time nature of reality, general semanticists use the extensional device of dates. Dates indicating we are dealing with a phenomena of space-time in a world of processes. Thus, when I finish my manuscript, I sign it Bani Calcano to indicate who I am. I sign it Bani Calcano 11/2003 to indicate who I am at a certain point in time. If you doubt you are a space-time event, a general semanticist would have you look in the mirror and compare the face you see now with what you saw 10 years ago. Another extensional device used in general semantics is the hyphen. The hyphen is used in general semantics to verbally join together what is not found separate in nature. Hyphens emphasize the interrelatedness of all aspects of reality. There cannot be something at no time, said Korzybski, or something at some time, and nowhere or nothing, somewhere at some time. Everything which happens, Korzybski emphasizes, must be structurally represented as something, somewhere, at some time. I'll say that again. Everything which happens, Korzybski emphasized, must be structurally represented as something, somewhere, at some time. Everything in this world is strictly interrelated with everything else, said Korzybski, and so we must make efforts to discard primitive, elementalistic terms, which imply structurally a non-existing isolation. We think, for instance, of feelings and thoughts as separate, yet thoughts always have an affective component, and feelings always involve some kind of thought. We don't find a split between a feeling and a thought in our experience. We also don't find a split between the observer and the observed in nature. General semanticists stress whatever we observe is the joint product of the observer and the observed. You can't discern, they explain, what something is in itself, apart from your participation in it. All observations, moreover, are made by some observer, general semanticists say. Thus, general semanticists speak of observer-observed, body-mind, space-time, etc. When we use hyphens to speak of space-time, space-time, and observer-observed, and mind-body, Korzybski said, we acquire a new world outlook. We react to things differently, stressed Korzybski. We cannot talk sense about life, Korzybski said, if we keep using our old Aristotelian language. Thus, Korzybski, through the creation of extensional devices, such as indexing, dates, the use of etc. and hyphens, along with other extensional devices, sought to increase our awareness of how we abstract from the unspeakable event level in an effort to help us better represent and deal with reality.